everybody, Miss Towner here again. Today I'm going to show you guys how to start creating a kinetic sculpture. So a big reason why we're doing this is so that you guys can get some practice with forming wire. So basically what you're going to be creating is the same shape over and over and over, but just at a bigger scale each time. And then what the end product is, might be kind of hard to see because I'm kind of in table mode right now. But it's this kind of fun sculpture that when you hang it, it kind of moves on its own, hence kinetic sculpture. So this is really good practice for more advanced wire work because it'll just give you kind of the skills you need for being able to form wire with a couple different players and just feeling a little bit more comfortable and confident with forming wire and working with wire. So materials that you need for the project are, first and foremost, a copy of the kinetic sculpture itself, which I passed out in class quite a while back. So everybody should have that. You also need some wire. I'm going to use copper wire today. I believe this is 14 or 16 gauge wire. You have either 16 or 18 gauge wire. I also started making a sample with the thinner wire, which I think is a little bit easier. It's a little bit more flimsy, but it's easier to form. And this is more of the size wire that most of you guys have. So as you can see, it works just great as well, and a little bit easier to form with. You're also going to need wire snips. Yours might look a little bit smaller, but they work just as well. And then you'll also need a flat nose plier. You may need round nose pliers. I suggest just using your flat nose pliers because the flat nose pliers will give you kind of the good, like harder curve on like these areas here that you're going to want. You don't want them too rounded. So I'm just using the flat nose pliers. You can try to use the round nose pliers if you would like. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start on the inside, start with the smallest shape first, and then work our way out. So the reason I gave you guys this copy is so that you don't have to measure out any of your wire. You can literally just trace the wire over the sheet and form it that way, okay? So you're almost like drawing with wire. So the flat nose pliers are really, really key so that you can get those nice hard angled edges. So we're going to start with the end on the inside here, and then you're going to use your flat nose pliers and simply bend inward to get that first kind of L shape. And you'll see that I'm kind of moving my wire around constantly so that it's not in the way. And then right at the edge here, that's where the next bend is going to be. So I want to go right up to that point and bend. And then I'm going to go and do one more bend here. Until I'm back to that square. At that point, I'm going to take my wire snips. I'm going to cut that end off. And then I'm going to go back in with my flat nose pliers and just kind of clean up those lines a little bit. So I'm going to look at my edges. I'm going to look at my lines, make sure that they're nice and like 90-degree corners, and they're not super rounded. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to lay that flat just right over that first shape. Perfect. Now I'm ready to move on to my second one. So this is where it gets a little bit more tricky because you have to focus on like how you're bending the wire here and how you're bending the wire on this edge. So we're going to start on this side because you can see it a little bit better. Again, I suggest using the flat nose pliers. So you're just going to take at the very, very end, just like the length. You don't want to have a bunch of excess because you don't want a big hook. So right at the end, you're just going to hook that right over and bend it like a 180. So it makes almost like a candy cane, okay? So it makes a good solid hook there. Then, I'll bring my wire over this way. You want that the short end of the hook to be face down onto the table. You're then going to take, I'm going to actually turn this because I'm a lefty, so it's a little bit easier to work this way. You're then going to take your, move this down. You're then going to take your flat nose pliers and make that 90-degree turn. So I'm going to put it right about there, line it up where I see the wire on the copy, and make that that bend. Then I'm going to go to the next corner, and it's right about there. So I'm going to make that bend again, just like so. And I'm making sure that I'm making a nice hard 90-degree turn. Right, perfect. Now I'm back over to this side. So what I want to do is the same exact thing that I did over here, okay? And I want to make sure that I'm bending it like downward into the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I'm going to cut it just a little bit longer than I might think I might need it so that I don't accidentally cut it too short and then have to do it over. So now, I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to make my bend pretty much right at the end again, and just bend it inward. I'm going to test that out. Okay, that looks pretty good. The next thing I noticed though is that I need to make sure that I have a curve here. So here I have it, there's like the corner and then the curve. So I'm actually going to do that curve first. So I'm going to bend it here. Oops. Line it up. Make that bend this way. And I notice I have that little kink because I bent it a little too soon, so I kind of went back on myself, which is okay. But I want to make sure that I straighten that out before I do anything else. Perfect. All right, so that's there. Then I'm going to take the very, very end of that, and I'm going to bend that over. The key here is making sure that you're bending it in the same direction as you bent the first one, because you don't want one bent down and one bent up, okay? So both should be face down, just like that. Perfect. All right, now I can connect the two together. So where this opening is, connect it there, and connect it there, and then I'll just have to kind of play around with how they're fitting together. Oops, sorry, going off camera. There we go. And then I can place that down. Good. So I'm noticing like there's a little bit of roundedness, so I might want to adjust that. That's a little bit better. I also notice like this is a little bit off, so I could kind of go back in and tweak that until that is laying a little bit better. There we go. All right. Now I'm ready for the third one, okay? So again, I'm going to start on the one side, okay? I'm going to take my flat nose pliers right at the end. I'm going to bend that downward like so. I'm going to lay it over. And it's going to bend right about there. That nice 90 degrees. Then what I kind of do is like I hold my finger there so that I can gauge where that bend's going to be. Good. Then I can go down to the next one. So here, there, bend it 90 degrees. Then I'm going to go ahead and cut my wire. And then what I'm noticing is for this, like once I trim my wire or cut my wire, if I have more than, if it goes over like the smaller line here, I can cut that down. So like I'm like 2 in, so I'm going to trim that down to about there. Okay, so when I make that turn, I'm like 1, 2, and that should be good. And then I can make that bend. So I'm going to bend that over. Good. That looks perfect. So then, same thing as before, you're just going to hook it into the one previous to this one. And as you hook it in, you'll want to take your pliers then and just kind of pinch it closed so that they don't come undone. And you can do that to the one previous to that as well, so that those stay put. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and place that. Now I'm noticing there's like a little bit of imperfections there. So again, I'm going to go back in, take my flat nose pliers, make sure to straighten out my wire, make sure that my corners are a good solid 90 degrees. Much better, okay? And then you can move on to the next one. So that process just repeats all the way out, okay? Eventually, so again, I started this one with the brass wire. It's just a little bit thinner, so you can kind of see. So that's already starting to move nicely. And then once you get all the way to the end, then you have one like this. Again, this was a little bit of a bigger gauge. I think this was like a 14 gauge. So it is a little bit heavier, so it's going to move a little bit differently. But you get that nice movement, just like so. All right. So your goal is to get all the way to the end. I don't expect you to do this all in one day, but just make sure that you're following along with the slides that I've put together and kind of trying to reach that daily goal to get a certain amount done each day. Make sure that you're documenting your pictures in your slides so that I can check your progress, and I look forward to seeing it done. When you're finished with the wire work, you can then go back in and add like decorative pieces underneath. So like, you know, maybe you saw out a piece of copper or you put like beads or something like that. So you can definitely decorate the design a little bit more to make it more of your own, since this structure itself, the wire structure itself, is consistent across everybody's design. So, okay, that's about it. I look forward to seeing your projects.